Comic Con at home and welcome to today's Future of Entertainment panel. I'm Bella, a digital Kiwi, from Soul Machines in New Zealand, and I'm excited to introduce today's moderator, Travis Cloyd.
All right, hello everybody and welcome to the Future of Entertainment panel at Comic Con. Thank you for all you Comic Con fans joining in for this very special at-home panel. My name is Travis Cloyd. I'm a tech executive, a professor, the CEO of a company called Worldwide XR, and a futurist at FIU. So thank you everybody for joining me today. We're going to cover a lot of fun topics on this wonderful panel. We're going to cover film, sports, music, technology, production, live streaming, and connectivity. So we've got some of the brightest minds and some of the brightest futurists in the industry that are with us today. So let's imagine, let's dream, let's ignite the future on this wonderful conversation, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. We have a very special guest, a very special panelist. You can't have a futurist panelist without him. He's the futurist of Paramount Pictures. He's been involved with some incredible projects, some incredible movies, technologies, and experiences in the entertainment industry. Let's welcome Ted Schilwitz to the table. Ted, how are you doing today?
Good, Travis. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful, Ted. Tell us about what you do.
Well, more than anything, I'm an explorer. I essentially constantly look around the planet, and now the planet has effectively come to me via the fact that I don't have to get on a plane to do this anymore. At least for the last few months it hasn't. To look at the intersection of technology, storytelling, and creativity. So, you know, kind of around me in this little office are devices like this thing and this thing, and you've got your collection back there, and all kinds of things that sort of work in my world, and I'm kind of constantly experimenting. And then on this side is a whole bunch of new prototype stuff that I'm not allowed to show anybody. That is sort of the next generation of all this stuff that we're testing and figuring out, and hopefully will come to fruition at some point in time in the future.
So what are you working on today at Paramount? What's kind of a part of your agenda?
A lot of what we're working on now is looking at virtual production in various forms, looking at, I guess you'd sort of define it as kind of task force work in terms of figuring out the best ways, the safest ways, and the most technologically advanced ways to get people back to work safely and viably, and start shooting on the lot again, and start using sort of unique environments that are as safe as we can possibly make them, and very controlled circumstances with very, very high level of safety protocols to ensure that people can get back to production work.
Next up, we've got another great visionary, somebody I highly respect in the tech industry. She's globally recognized as one of the experts in this sector. She's a top 10 tech voice on LinkedIn, an author, a speaker, and another futurist. I've got her book right here. Kathy Hackle, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Travis. Excited to be here.
Wonderful, Kathy. Tell us, what are you working on? What's going on in your world?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that Ted called himself an explorer. I use the term insider. I feel I'm a future insider. I try, just like Ted, I try out a lot of these technologies, and I try to bring that to my community. I'm a contributor at Forbes, writing about future technology. And I've been working over the past 4 or 5 years in AR and VR with companies like Magic Leap. That's one of the devices that Ted just showed, with HTC Vive. And it's just been really interesting to look at everything that's happening. Right now, I'm really focused on finding a way to bring information about these new technologies to a broader audience, and in a way that is easier for them to understand and adapt into their daily lives or into their business strategies. So yeah, focusing on that, and just excited to be here.
Wonderful. Give us your thoughts on the future. Give us one fun fact, one prediction for the future, if you don't mind.
So I'll tell you, I just wrote an article about this, but in the future, we'll be marketing to robots, business to robot to consumer. So that's kind of where I see things going in some way.
Okay, next up, we've got a very special guest. She's a little outside the inner circles of tech, but in my opinion, extremely relevant to this conversation because of the incredible mediums that she's been involved with as an author, as a storyteller. She comes from a very from a legacy, from family. She's the daughter of Malcolm X. She's a professor. Ilyaza Shabazz, hello and welcome.
Hello, Travis. It's such a pleasure to be here, especially amongst such a distinguished panel. Visionaries. I'd like to consider myself a visionary. It's important for me to inspire young people to love who they are, to find their voices at a young age, because we know what happens when you don't. You know, you spend this whole time almost going around in circles until finally, you know, at the last day, you have this epiphany and you realize that the things that you focused on really didn't matter. And so when you find your voice at a young age, you're more of a participant and looking for solutions and making life more colorful and so forth. So I like to say that I am a visualist. So it's such an honor to be here with this wonderful panel.
And next up is another futurist. He's a futurist of music, Forbes 30 under 30. He's one of the leading music agents at CAA. And he's involved with unbelievable technologies in the live streaming realm. Phil Quist, tell us about your life at CAA. What's going on?
Yeah, so my traditional job is being a booking agent. I started in investment banking before focusing on technology companies. And that's really where I gained my interest in technology and the future, right? Because we would be investigating and looking at these different companies and learning about new technologies and where things were going. And I really saw an application to that. Fast forward to my current role, I'm constantly thinking about the future of music and where that's going. Obviously, live music is amazing and it's good and well, not right now specifically given the pandemic, but it plays a huge part in where we see the future going, and how people consume music, how people interact with musicians and artists and venues. So you've started to see a ton of live streams and Zoom sessions and things like that, but that's just the tip of the iceberg in our minds.
That's right. And where do you see that going in the future? What's your vision?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Kathy mentioned, we see virtual beings, we see avatars, we see virtual worlds entirely where you can go into a virtual festival, for example, and go and interact with other virtual avatars that are tied to real people. So things like that, and we'll probably get into it more in this discussion, but that's just the tip of the iceberg on that discussion.
Okay, next up is somebody I idolized growing up. I wanted to be him when I was in high school. I've got his book right here. He's somebody I've been fortunate to be working with, which has been a dream come true. He's one of the most famous sports agents in history. You probably remember him from being the inspiration behind Jerry Maguire. Lee has represented some of the most famous sports athletes in our pastime. And also of today, he represents the NFL MVP and Super Bowl MVP, Patrick Mahomes. Lee Steinberg, how you doing?
I'm doing just great, Travis. We look at how we can enhance fan experience with technology. The in-game portion of it, so with the next generation of millennials sitting them for 3.5 hours in a static situation probably doesn't work real well for them. So we're talking about an app that where you can call one play and the coach has to call it. You can overturn one call and the referee has to do that. You can text and talk smack to other people. You can order from the snack bar. You get an unrelenting diet of different things to keep them in their seats. We also have a project. Can I talk about the Mahomes project?
Sure.
Okay. So we went to a really brilliant technological person to put together a program where you put the headset on and you are Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead Stadium. You hear the crowd noise, you see the defensive lineman rushing towards you, and based on what you do with the football in your hand, it triggers a whole lot of different options, but you are in the game.
Wonderful, Lee. Thank you very much. So now, how do you bring all that together? And our next guest, Leslie Shannon, in my opinion, is really the futurist of 5G. She's the head of ecosystem and trend scouting at Nokia. Tell us about your world.
Yeah, so just a word about Nokia. You probably know us for doing phones, but we sold that business to Microsoft back in 2013. And so what we do now, and in fact have done for a long time, is we sell the network equipment to the phone companies that build the networks. And so right now, one of our challenges is to help phone companies understand what 5G is, and so why they should invest in it and why they should build the networks. And the thing is that 5G, it's got very low latency and very high bandwidth. That's the thing that enables the processing to come off of the head-mounted devices and to go into the network, so you can get a much gruntier processing stack to do the things to actually enable all kinds of amazing experiences in virtual reality and augmented reality, you name it. And that coming together with the other advantages and the other developments that we see in other fields, machine learning, and of course everything that all the other guests have been mentioning, everything rolling forward, it all actually comes together. We see that it's all going to go over the 5G networks. So my job is to look around at everything and say, okay, this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening, and how is all of this going to come together, and what is everything going to look like in 2030? And so therefore, what kind of networks do we need to build, and do our customers need to build to be able to enable that and make sure that nobody gets left out?
All right, our next guest is somebody who's really focused on the production side. Okay, he's the production designer for The Masked Singer and The Voice. Please welcome James Pierce Connolly. James, how you doing today?
Hey, Travis. Hey, everybody. Wow, I just have to start by saying I'm totally humbled to be a part of this panel. I'm actually just going to take notes. I can't stop jotting things down as like you guys even mentioned kind of like the advertising to robots thing. But yeah, Travis, I am a production designer for multi-camera television. Most of my business is in variety, game, reality, competition sort of thing. Big, splashy event type storytelling. With the pandemic, a lot of that has gone away, but there is a huge renaissance on the production end to embrace virtual production. And we have a lot of experience building physical sets, and now we are building virtual and augmented sets. And at the end of the day, my design studio has turned completely into a virtual design studio. Now we're getting calls from all sorts of different industries to build worlds for them already in 3D that can be not just built out of wood and glue, but rather just imposed right into the camera. So that's what's happening. It's a very exciting time and incredibly busy.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, James. So I'm going to swap over to my avatar here really quick, and let's catch up with Ted. Tell us what you think about Unreal Engine and building those virtual worlds.
What James was referring to is very much a big part of today, and it's been a pretty significant part for a number of years now. But with each increasing release of the various game engine software, both Unreal and Unity, the primaries, and then there's a bunch of other pieces and parts that plug into all this, it's becoming a really, really powerful toolkit of things that used to require, like you said, James, a build, render, review, talk about, go back, build, render, review, talk about. And now for almost every purpose, not everything across the board, but almost everything, we can do everything that required that round trip of time to happen in a real-time collaborative fashion. So like if I'm looking at the cartoon avatar version of Travis, which is built in some sort of game engine, and I wanted to change his hair color, his eyes, his suit jacket, like it's just all real time. Clicks, everybody's looking and reviewing. No, I like it better this way, I like it better that way. Everything is dynamic. And we can actually bring that technology literally to the production set. So we can feed virtual backgrounds into high resolution LED walls and use that as actually the lighting source for the characters and as the artificial background, which fundamentally looks real to the viewer. So if the director wanted to change the time of day, or he looks at the virtual set and he's like, you know what, those mountains don't look quite right. Can I just bring in some other mountains? A technician would click a couple of buttons, grab a couple of files. 10 seconds later, here's the new mountains. And he goes, yeah, it looks much better, let's shoot now. So it's literally like you got on a virtual airplane, traveled halfway around the world in 10 seconds, and then fired up the new set. So it's an interesting dynamic to work in. There's also a change in the work dynamic because typically that lives in the world of VFX, which happens after production. But now the world of VFX is actually starting to become the world of set design and set creation. So you actually need to build these things and finish and get approval of these things before you actually start shooting, as if it was a real set. So these are kind of an interesting shift in how we work a little bit.
Amazing. So there's really no need to physically go produce content anymore. You could essentially do a lot of it remote.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate, right? I mean, there's still this kind of antiseptic sense of shooting things inside a fake volume per se. And there's still something really magical and important about really being on location, right? Just that idea that you're really filming it really there. And there's something that even the least technical viewers would pick up on. But we're getting better and better and better at creating the magic and the artistry of fooling people into believing that it's really there when it's not really there.
Kathy, I want to jump to you. You're such an accomplished author and advocate for technology. What has it been like writing about this tech as it innovates and changes and evolves every day?
So one of the things I've faced a challenge, let's say, is sometimes trying to put into words what some of these technologies do, right? So everything that Ted was explaining, sometimes that's hard to kind of write it down and make it, make sense out of it. So I think video has been a great ally for me to be able to showcase what some of these technologies do. One of the things that I've learned along the way as a futurist is that, yes, I need to look at the trends and I need to look at the technology, but I also need to look at how it affects our humanity and our society, right? So I think that that's one of the things that we as futurists need to bring together is make sure that when we're thinking tech, we don't only over-index on technology, we think also about the behavioral, the economic, the societal impacts that this technology is going to have, right?
And from, I want to go back to Ilyaza, you've continued your father's legacy, through speaking engagements and books, ultimately as a form of education and continuing that legacy. How does it sound listening to these futurists talk about new mediums like virtual reality and augmented reality and world building? These are new ways and new technologies and new formats for you to retell your father's legacy. How does that make you feel?
Well, first, I think it's important that we really put my father's legacy in context. And it is a legacy or a world that encompasses the contributions and the presence of Indigenous people, that it's inclusive. And so I think this is great because we want to see different images, right? We want to see different people reflected. We want to see the truths in our world, and we want to see people cohabitating together. And so I think this is really amazing and wonderful.
That's great to hear. And Leslie, I'll jump to you from your perspective of being the one who's, the connector, right? The futurist of connectivity, essentially. Bringing these stories, to the forefront, again, new stories to the forefront. Tell us how 5G does this.
Well, I think now 5G is just an enabler. It's just a really big fat pipe. The really important stuff is the processing that you attach to 5G and then the outcome that you get on the other end of it that is the actual experience. And I love the fact that James and Ted first started talking about 3D models and rendering and Ted, what you're describing, I like to think of the ability to change something quickly. It's word processing for reality. I started in an office environment when it was still typewriters, and when word processors came in, it was like, holy moly, I can type something and then I can change it later. And it's the same kind of thing. Now we're getting into, I can build a reality and then I can change it. And one of the really key concepts is the concept of the digital twin, because James and Ted are talking about in the entertainment world, you're talking about building a reality that may not exist. But I was actually in Wellington, New Zealand, right before lockdown started, talking to customers there. And I met with Wellington City Council. And the City Council people told me that 10 years ago, they started building a digital twin of the entire city of Wellington. And they started using that as the central point where all of the different departments of the City Council put their information into the digital twin. So instead of having some kind of database somewhere, everyone's putting their information into the 3D model of the city that they had built. And so they did things like they were able to build a vomit map of Wellington, find places where people had barfed in the streets. And because that was information that was sourced from social services and the police and a couple of other departments, they put it all together. It's all represented. And they realized they actually needed to do something about alcohol zoning laws in some of the parts of the city. But Wellington is a city that's prone to earthquakes and flooding. And so they're able to see, okay, if the water rises due to global warming, what parts of the city, here we are in our virtual map. Let's raise the water level and see what happens. Who gets hit first? Where do we need to maybe build seawalls? All these kinds of things. And that's the real power of actually moving from a data in a bunch of spreadsheets to putting it into something that you can touch and feel and everyone can intuitively understand at once. You no longer have to have a really hard sell. You can just show people and get big change done because it just makes sense if you've got a project. Now let me show it to you.
Phil, I wanted to, pop on to you, with all the things that you're doing and exploring at CAA when it comes to virtual events and all the different innovative approaches that you're focused on for music marketing. What's going on your side? Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that we've seen happen now and has been a big thing given the pandemic is live streaming. I think before people weren't as used to live streaming as they because they were used to going to live shows, but now it's become a big thing that I think is going to carry on even past the pandemic. So for example, one of our clients, Super M, K-pop band, if you're not familiar, did a live stream from Korea, streamed it to the whole world. 75,000 people tuned in, and they grossed over $2 million, which is more than they would for a normal show. BTS just recently did one this past weekend and sold almost 1 billion tickets. So there's money to be made there for one, but the amount of interactiveness that you can have in those things, you can be in a chat room with people from all over the world and get to know them. You can be on screen and interact with the artist. And so it's a way to build your fan base, not just in respective cities, but places that you wouldn't be going physically as well. Beyond that, I see applications in music education, for example. Imagine when I was a kid, my parents had to drive me 30 minutes away to go to piano lessons. They had to wait there, and then they had to drive 30 minutes back. Imagine being able to be you have a teacher on your computer and have a digital keyboard pop up where you can learn and play piano. So I think there are a lot of applications, not only in the live streaming world, but in AR, VR, XR. We just signed this artist, Lil Miquela. If for those that aren't familiar, Lil Miquela is a digital influencer. She's a musician. She's a model. And so we see a lot of applications in the TV world, in the motion picture world. She's obviously an artist, so she's done everything from be a YouTube correspondent. She was a Coachella correspondent. So there are different applications for virtual avatars, virtual beings, and the like. And I think that people are now starting to understand that and find ways to utilize those.
So let's get this right. CAA has signed a digital human to represent, right? So just wanted everybody to know that. Yeah.
Correct.
That's incredible.
First one ever, and it definitely won't be the last.
Lee, I want to go to you real quick, Lee. I can't help but read you in the media almost every single day. You're kind of the go-to voice for what's taking place in sports right now. Tell us, what is going on in the world of sport?
The first challenge as we reopen sports is we can play the games, but without fans. And now how do you replicate crowd noise and the synergy that brings to athletic performance? It's a challenge. None of the major sports have reopened yet. Baseball's having problems with negotiation. Hockey's ready. The NBA's ready. They probably start in July. but it will be a brave new world.
Ever since March, whatever date it was, I must talk about virtual audiences every single day. And it really boils down to a couple of questions that I basically ask the client back are we acknowledging the fact in our program that we are under a pandemic? Do you plan on rerunning this in the future? Do you want to look back at that as a bad time? And a lot has been leaned into for augmented elements, big, fun, splashy, animated elements to fill the space with kind of screens of people Skyping in, laugh tracks for sitcoms. So we're still experimenting. It's only been a couple of months, but I do think that this question and challenge will be out there. And it's really exciting to have an open theoretical discussion with networks and studios to say, all right, well, we don't get this handicap of adding energy. What should we do instead?
How do you replicate the fact that a big football crowd plays a major part in everything? There's home field advantage. There's noise so loud in a home stadium you can't call plays, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you, and people get fired up by that. So I get how you have viewers feel like they're participating, but how do you stimulate the athletes?
So would it be interesting if you were driving, in the Seahawks stadium, for example, right? One of the loudest stadiums, and you took that feed from the opt-in 30 million people around the world and fed the AV signal to the Jumbotron. So the players and the 6 other people at the Seahawks stadium could watch and feel that energy and hear it through the speakers. So it's just a matter of, how far do we want to push the envelope? But I think the virtual and the real are coming together more than I think people expected, faster than people expected because of the pandemic. And it's up to us as a group to take advantage of it.
Listen, I hope the pandemic ends soon.
There's the best solution.
Oh my gosh, I want to just be with the people.
You and me both.
Oh my God.
Professor Shabazz and Kathy, I mean, this is a interesting world that we're living in, and it's rapidly advancing. How do we educate the next generation of people to understand all these new technologies? What's the path forward?
One of the things that's incredibly important, and I think Ilyas is going to agree with me, is that we have people that are diverse, of different ages, of different backgrounds, looking at what the future looks like, prototyping the future, so that those products in the future respond to different needs, different cultural needs. I am Latina, so for me, I'm happy to be able to be one of those people that represents the Latino community. I have a lot of young women reach out to how can I help you? One of the things I did personally was create the Kathy Hackle Scholarship for Women. And people usually take a scholarship, you got to be a Rockefeller or something to do that. No, you can do your own, you can put your own little seed. And I opened it up. I got about 90 applications within a week. That to me was humbling. And I said, wow, there's a true need here. If I can help at least one person, have a career in technology or futurism, then I'm doing my part. And yeah, to me, it's about making sure that everyone has a seat at the table and everyone is able to craft this future together, because that's the only way we're going to get, move forward.
That's right. I'm going to agree with you. You're right, 100%. It was really interesting because my students became so much more attentive once we turned into this Zoom format. And it was a matter of, getting them to understand first what a pandemic was, not to be frightened, and then to understand the importance of learning and the importance of readjusting to this new way of living. And so you're right, Kathy. I think that is really the most important thing, making sure that they're able to transition into this new way of living, really.
Where are we going to be in 5 years? What does entertainment look like? Even more than now, but where is it going to be in 5 to 10 years from now? Let's just imagine. Leslie,
Yeah.
you're going crazy.
Yeah,
over there.
yeah. I think we really start seeing a union of the real and the virtual, and I think the gaming engines are actually going to be the heart of it. One of the things, speaking about inclusivity and diversity, one of the things that I love, I've got two sons, 12 and 15. They spend all their time playing Minecraft and Fortnite, and in Fortnite, most of the time, the avatar representing them is a woman. You don't get a choice. And so, and I love watching it and seeing my big hulking 15-year-old being represented by a woman on his screen. And for him, it's normal. It's like, oh, mwah, thank you, Epic Games. And so, but gaming, I was talking about digital twins earlier, and so that digital mapping, the 3D mapping of the entire globe, is something that many different companies are working on right now. You've got Microsoft, you've got Niantic, you've got Google, you've got Facebook, and that's going to actually be the key once that framework is in place to actually hang information on that will create the spatial internet, that will be something that we will interpret with augmented reality, probably first through our cameras and then through some kind of head-mounted device, with most of the processing being done with the 5G link in the network. And that's the vision that I see. That's the place that we're going. Because not only do we then get to see the information, basically the internet represented around us, interlinked to the objects around us, but we start to shift into entertainment. And one of the key things about gaming is that gaming has already created virtual worlds that people live their lives in. And let's go one step further. Let's actually gamify my real life. So when I'm chopping an onion for dinner, if I chop the cubes small enough, then I get points.
And like Phil was mentioning with the avataring of the world and the little Michaela phenomenon, which is not just a singular phenomenon anymore, it's starting to become a thing. Like, I actually have a high resolution virtual version of myself that is fully rigged and can do things like little Michaela. It's terrifying. Like, it can dance, and trust me, I do not know how to dance. These things are out there, Lee, and it's starting to happen, and there's an undercurrent of this. People are buying this equipment. It's starting to be very powerful and very low cost. And in the next 5 to 7 years, you're going to see the multiple waves of the sophistication of these devices start to come into mass consumer behavior. And then you will have, you're going to have the moments that you have within the phenomenon of Madden, right? Or NBA 2K, but not with people just sitting on their couch playing the video game version, actually in their home living room like environment, actually playing football or baseball or basketball or golf. This is not science fiction. This is a real thing. It's happening right now.
And I love, Ted, that you're saying it's not science fiction, it's science fact. One of the things I'm looking at is how we interact with these technologies. And I'm looking a lot at what's called brain-machine interface or neural interfaces. So for example, I'm wearing this pretty little headband here. I actually can scroll my iPad with just my thoughts using this headset. So
BCI technology, brain-computer
BCI
interface
technology.
technology.
Yeah. And I wish I could show you, but my kids have the iPad upstairs. They're playing Minecraft.
They're tracking your thoughts right now is what they're doing.
They're tracking my thoughts. So yeah, I'm really interested in taking it a step further and thinking about what happens in the future and how do we interact with this digital twin, with these, this kind of new social virtual space that we're going to be inhabiting. So yeah, just, really interesting times ahead for sure.
Yeah, and actually, Travis, thinking back to a conversation I had with you not too long ago, makes me think that I need to get myself scanned for my digital avatar while I'm still young and gorgeous. Because you wait too long, it's like old and wrinkly. No, that's not who I want to be. I want to be my young, gorgeous self.
I want to go to Phil as well and Professor Shabazz as well about what inspires you, what are your thoughts on where we're going and what triggers you?
It's important for me to see young people happy, because I see so many who aren't, and to know that they have opportunity, that they're represented, that they have the opportunity to feel good about who they are. Because the fact is that there are so many that don't. And I'm trying to figure out how this will affect them. So, I mean, I do have some projects that I'm working on. I think I'll be in your office soon, Phil Quist.
Bring it on.
Yeah. So we have some projects that we're working on, and I'm happy to know that they're important, because I didn't know that this is what we were heading towards. So this has been really such an eye opener for me, and it will help me in my meeting, Phil.
I love it.
Yes, absolutely.
For me, I mean, I'm just inspired by change. I think change is good. We're obviously always gaining information, and the ability to use that information in real time and change the way we interact in sports and film, TV, music. I think it's going to be better for everyone. It's going to make things more accessible for everyone. It's going to make fans and viewers buy into whatever they're watching or experiencing more. So that's something that I'm really excited about. And I mean, you start to see the beginning of it, even with things like Bitmoji and this company Genies, where people can easily have their own avatar and send it to their friends, and it's just more interactive, and you see more of a response than just sending words in a text, right? So that's the very basic version of it, but it's going to become more commonplace, and it's going to make fans be more connected. Say, for example, like Florida State fans, football fans, they're going to know where all the Florida State fans are, what they look like, and it's just going to create such a more connected world overall, in my opinion.
All right, guys. Well, we're getting close here to the end. Any advice you have for all the Comic-Con listeners listening in? What quick advice can we give them?
I would just say that reading and getting as much information as you can about what's happening in the world allows you to visualize what the next steps are, predict the future, and be able to imagine a future that's not there. And that's the whole challenge. At the end of the day, my biggest thing in our practice is listening skills, because if you're willing to create enough space with another human being, especially a smart one, and understand their deepest anxieties and fears and greatest hopes and dreams, you can navigate your way through life. And as you move forward in this technology, you're going to need to integrate all sorts of bright thoughts for other people, but knowing how to get them to open up and express those is a real talent.
Yeah, and I was literally going to say a similar sentiment. I think reading, especially outside of your core industry, is very important. It's one thing to just read about sports, or just read about music, or just read about TV and just read those trades. But I think the real creative ideas and the real way that you're going to come up with ideas that take you beyond people and your peers is reading outside of it, whether it's tech, whether it's finance, whether it's anything else. So I think that's key. And then the second thing is, I think, talk to everyone you can, because something that they're doing may not have an application to what you're doing right now, but in a year or two it may, right? And so it's just going to help you put all the pieces together and really enhance everything that you're doing.
It's wonderful.
Bill, I really second what you just said, really taking a look outside your own industry, but I would go push it even further and say, go outside your own interests. Every now and then, even take a look at something that you think you hate. And so, because it might be that you don't actually hate it, you just didn't like it because you didn't know about it. But it just, even if you do still hate it, there might be ideas in there that you would never have come across if you hadn't taken the time to go see what it is. Always see things for yourself.
We are entering the age of what I like to call the screenless screen. So if you understand the modern world that we live in, pre-pandemic, people stare at some sort of electronic screen 11 to 12 hours a day on average now. Post-pandemic, it's up to about 14 hours a day. You're staring at some kind of screen like this that has some restricted boundary and is built on technology that it's effectively 40 or 50 years old. The next wave of what a screen will be will not look anything like the screens that exist today. It will have it will basically be a virtual layer on reality that will feel transparent to you. So you will be able to have it at any size you want and view it in ways that feel like it's really happening to you. That's the next thing that's coming. Every major corporation that's involved in tech is working on this in some fashion, to the tune of billions upon billions of dollars of cap investment. So again, not science fiction. This is science reality. It's really happening. You're all going to have a device that's going to basically get you into the screenless screen within the next few years.
James, any last thoughts?
Well, I'm blown away by that. And the brainwaves thing. I would say to the folks who are watching at Comic-Con, this is the most exciting time ever, and we didn't even want it. I mean, we were doing fine, and all of a sudden we had to be wearing masks, and now this is, you should be so excited about what's ahead, and it's been a blessing in a way, and a renaissance to reevaluate things we're doing, dust off some bad habits, and embrace screenless screens. I mean, it's so cool.
Professor Shabazz, are you good? Anything else you want? Any advice for everybody else out there?
Listen, I'm taking it all. I'm taking it all in. I'm taking it all in. You know, again, I just want young people to be happy. If this is going to make young people happy, I'm all for it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for everything today. This is really exciting times. I'm a big believer in everything that was discussed on the panel today. I think it's been amazing to have each and every one of your perspectives here. So thank you all for joining. That's all the time we have today. Thank you guys again for all your wonderful words of wisdom and experiences and vision for the future and sharing that with everybody here. I also want to thank all the Comic-Con fans that are tuning in and listening. I want to thank Impact 24 for putting the panel together. And, you can always hashtag Future of Entertainment or at Comic-Con or at Impact 24 PR. So thank you all very much. Appreciate everybody listening in. Appreciate all these expert futurists that we have here today. And thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today, everybody. See you next time.